This is an interesting article. It's from a couple months ago now, or almost 2 months ago. But I wanted to cover it anyway. This is in Countercurrents, which is full disclosure. They are the outfit that used to publish my books, but then decided to stop publishing my books. So I have a history there. Nevertheless, I found this article to be of value, and it's the only piece of writing that I'm aware of which discusses this subject in the way that I think is useful, if not essential. And that is the subject of, we hear a lot about radicalization. We hear a lot about online radicalization, of course, and how people, especially young men, get radicalized, especially young white men, get radicalized on the internet and and exposed to, quote, extreme ideologies, and that this is a problem. This is a real problem. Well, this article takes a look at those who have taken it upon themselves to attempt to de-radicalize the so-called radicals, those who have been supposedly radicalized by the internet, or radicalized on the internet, whatever preposition you want to use there. So Nicholas R. Gielvi is the writer, and he writes, I'm not going to just read the whole thing, but I want to cover some things that he mentions and then fill it in with some thoughts of my own. He writes, one of the words that has recently seen a lot of use, but I fear is insufficiently analyzed, is de-radicalization. On its face, it's self-evident. It refers to the process of abandoning radical beliefs for more moderate ones and adjusting one's political direction and activism accordingly. Right. There is something I think frequently disingenuous about all talk of radicalization or extremism. It's in essence using these scary sounding words in order to it's a sort of ad hominem fallacy, essentially. It says X perspective is, quote, radical or, quote, extreme, and you don't want to be radical or extreme because that's dangerous. That makes you dangerous. People who are extreme or radical are prone to doing dangerous things, and you want to be moderate. You want to be de-radicalized and be thus moderated. And you want to become a moderate and become somebody who isn't dangerous anymore, who isn't prone to violence or prone to extreme acts. All right, so Gielvi goes on to write in this article, when we say something is a de-radicalization op, we mean that it is an operation by any group of enemies aimed at affecting de-radicalization of radical white identitarians. Okay, well, he gets specific about his particular type of ideology, but I don't think I want to expand this to any perspective or ideology that is called, quote, extreme or, quote, radical. Okay, so the classic de-radicalization scenario involves a young man who is already radical in his views encountering a new influence, whether online or in real life, which poses as friendly but is, in fact, primarily concerned with making the young man turn away from radical politics and its associated beliefs and activism. So the de-radicalizer is two-faced, because he or she approaches typically two-faced, because he or she typically approaches the radicalized person with an agenda. And on the one hand, the de-radicalizer seems to be interested in just hearing from or having a conversation with the so-called radicalized or extremist, the so-called radical or extremist, but actually this person, the de-radicalizer, has an agenda, which is to make the person who is radical or extreme, quote unquote, into a de-radicalized, unextreme, moderate person. The de-radicalizer, I'll just use the pronoun she for the de-radicalizer, because it seems to make the most sense. It seems to be the most apropos. She wants to defang the so-called radicalized one. So this influencer will try to steer him, the radicalized person, towards politics which are more palatable to the political mainstream and easier to instrumentalize for its power brokers. It necessarily entails leading the young man away from radical politics, which is away from a politics which seeks to address the root causes of social problems, and turn him towards surface-level politics. Okay. So this is not another tired rehash of the so-called optics question. All right. I'll skip over that bit. I'll put a link to this article for anyone who's interested in reading the whole thing. Since the de-radicalizer seeks to drive the young man away from the radical and into the superficial, he cannot appeal to reason or facts in order to do so. Rather, he or she must use emotional, often hurtful language in his manipulation. He will correctly point out that engaging in radical politics leads to lessened social status for the dissident. Yeah, what are you doing? With all these crazy ideas, you're making yourself into a pariah. No one wants to be around you. You're emitting this psychic stench because of the ideas that you believe in, that you espouse. Then encourage status anxiety in people so that they may feel emotionally prepared to abandon radical politics altogether. So this is the manipulation tactics that they use. They say, you have embraced this set of beliefs that makes you unpalatable to most people. And so they give some examples here. He or she will alternately use insults, often those popular with the left, such as incel, oh boy, the indispensable wignat, or even some old-fashioned ones like scum and white trash, and signal his own, often feigned, higher social status. So it's an appeal to status, isn't it? The de-radicalizer appeals to social status. The de-radicalizer says to the radical, or the one he's branded as, he or she has branded as radical or extreme. I'm sorry, I'm getting thrown off with the pronouns here, because I was going to go with the she pronoun, but this passage uses he, so I'm just I'll be probably a little haphazard about it. Anyway, there is a manipulation tactic used where they, on the one hand, there's a befriending of the so-called radical, or a feigned befriending. It's under the auspices of either befriending the radical or the extremist, so-called, or perhaps under the auspices of just wanting to have a conversation, perhaps for a podcast or something. So the de-radicalizer here benefits from leftist hegemony over the culture, which dictates the worth of a man is measured chiefly by the number of women he's bedded. All right, this goes for the incel slur. Hey, you're an incel. Nobody wants to be around you. You of course you're not romantically successful. Who would want to be with somebody like you who espouses the beliefs that you do? You've made yourself radioactive. You've made yourself, again, a pariah. So I want to make it clear, I don't know if the author of this article talks so much about the two-facedness of the de-radicalizer, because the de-radicalizer comes on as a friend or as someone who wishes the radical, the so-called radical or the so-called extremist well, wishes to turn his life around, wishes to help him recover his true self. It's almost like a cult deprogrammer. That's how the de-radicalizer views herself, as someone who is trying to deprogram someone else from believing the things that he believes. All right. So the de-radicalizer is not above outright lies and promoting wishful thinking. Okay. The famous de-radicalization ops is the QAnon cult. I don't know whether I agree with him there. I'm not pro QAnon. I'm not a QAnon person, but I don't know whether I would call it I wouldn't use the language cult there. I think the QAnon people are mistaken, but I don't think they are non-radical. I don't think they're. You talk to the mainstream media types, and they certainly don't think of QAnon as something that's not radical or not extreme. They have a great deal of vituperation that they heap upon QAnon stuff, QAnon ideas, which is not to say that QAnon is right, because as I've said before, I think that QAnon is essentially controlled opposition. So when everything else fails, the de-radicalizer will fall back to questioning the viability of radical politics, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So, many have pointed out that there are a significant number of GOP senatorial congressional candidates in America whose platform is essentially the alt-right platform from 2015 to 2017. Really? I don't know. I'd have to look into that. I'm not sure about that. Precisely because he has launched a status anxiety type of attack on the young dissident, however, the de-radicalizer blinds him to the state of affairs, because in engendering or encouraging status anxiety in the dissident, the de-radicalizer has made it impossible for him to see himself as part of a dissident elite. Okay, well, I guess if you want to say that Trump was was like the alt-right, and other Trump-esque figures are, people who split with the party line of the GOP on various things in various ways, on issues like foreign policy or immigration. Okay. Okay, so anyway, the deception ultimately rests upon obscuring the difference between power and status. The de-radicalization operatives, especially those which intend to demoralize radicals by slandering them as low in status, will correctly point out that the dissident is the lowest status member of any given system, but will then deceive them by obscuring the difference between within system power, which is derived from within system status, and power qua power, which derives from material, if not as easily quantified facts as strength, charisma, blah, blah, blah. Okay, anyway, I don't know if that's a distinction without a difference there. So, if a dissident is effectively gaslit into believing he is low status, powerless, stupid, and that radical politics is a dead end, he will not immediately de-radicalize, but will rather, as the kids like to say, black pill and seethe and cope in the dark corners of the internet. Okay. So that's the role played by the black pill. I've often said the black pill, if you embrace the black pill, you might as well be working for the enemy, because what is the result of the black pill? Demoralization. If you promote the black pill, you're promoting demoralization. So in that sense, yes, I think what I am saying can be held to be true. All right. But he says, the author of this article says, even when black-pilled and depressed beyond belief, radical politics sustains a man because it provides meaning to his existence. Maybe. I mean, but if you just think that it's hopeless, that it's over, and that nothing will ever change, okay. Okay, and then this person says some things that I'm not so down with about the so-called alt-light. But I'm interested in this subject of de-radicalization just because I don't think it's been talked about enough. And there are those among us who pose as being our friends, but who seem to have an agenda to de-radicalize us, to change us, to make us into something more palatable, because they see us having the beliefs that we do. They see it as a problem. And here I'm not, the article is chiefly about white nationalism. I'm not talking about white nationalism, exclusively here. I'm talking about any kind of ideology or belief or perspective that is outside of the mainstream, particularly that's seen to be on the right, that's seen to derive from traditionalist perspectives or points of view. And I don't think enough I think this article is valuable because it talks a bit about these kinds of people whose aim is obscured from us. That these are people who are not being completely honest. Now I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they might mean well. They might, in their hearts, believe that they mean well, and that they just would like to see, these people, who have embraced ideologies or ideas that are perceived to be radical or dangerous or extreme, that they want to see. They see themselves as like peeling away at the doing what they can to peel away at the source of what has caused this person to go down the radical path, and to somehow restore the radical person's faith in whatever, in the system, basically. In order to bring him back to a moderate stance, to a so-called moderate stance, which is really just to say, to bring him back within the system, to bring him back to the point where he believes in the system as a vehicle for changing the world in the way that he sees fit. So there's a lot of cunning, there's a lot of deception, and I'm in the de-radicalizer, and I'm only beginning to sort of grasp this now. And I think I'm going to probably do a follow-up video on this subject, because it's something that I think, again, is worth discussing a bit more. But if anyone has your own thoughts or comments below, or if you think I'm wrong with regard to anything I've said, please let me know. Post your thoughts below this video, and I will also make the article available, although as I said, the article has a much narrower focus than I would prefer on this subject. Thanks for watching.